In our culture today, our faith has really been under attack from a lot of false ideas of what is right and wrong, how we define our worth, and really where and how we seek our happiness. But God in His eternal wisdom foresaw the pitfalls of our society, as well as every age since the birth of Christ, and has provided us with this institution, or rather this distinct state of life within the church, to act, in the words of Blessed John Paul II, not merely as a separate condition proper to a precise category of Christians, but rather as a reference point for all the baptized according to the gifts offered to each by the Lord. It was presented as a symbolic synthesis of Christianity. That reference point, as Mother Theodora stated, is monasticism. So we've already explored today what monasticism is, and we had a short history of how it has developed. Now, what I would like to tackle is the question, why does the world need monasticism? An interesting facet to monastic life, according to Father Armand Vallot, abbot of the Scormont Abbey in Belgium, is that what monastic life is in its essence never changes, no more than what the Christian life is in its essence. What changes is the specific form in which monastic life is meaningful, not only to Christians, but to every man and woman in a given society at a particular time. So how is monasticism meaningful to our culture today? While I could provide an endless list of all the answers to this question, I realize that we all probably like to go home at some point this evening, so I've narrowed my scope down to just four particular ways that I believe that monastics are particularly useful as a reference point. First and foremost, I believe that a monk understands his true value as a human person and models that for the world. In this country, we've really lost the understanding that we're not defined by our material goods or by the works that we do. And when encountering a monk, it means to encounter a person who really enfleshes the very idea that our value is not based on what we do, but who we are. The fact that we are beloved children of the Father and defined by His love alone. Blessed John Paul II said it best when he said, "We are not the sum of our weaknesses and failures. We are the sum of the Father's love for us." Particularly applying this idea to monastics, Father Armand described that the monk does not have any particular ministry in the church. He may be asked to play various functions in the church and society, or not, but nothing of what he does or does not do characterizes him as a monk. A fruit of living out of our true value as human beings is a unique phenomenon we refer to in our monastery as the ministry of presence. This title simply means our monastic call to hospitality, which is the art of being available in a real and a tangible way to the people that we encounter. We've experienced this in a particular way with the teens who come to our house for the annual girls' camp. Last year after girls' camp, the participants requested that we have a sleepover in the winter to get everybody together again, which I know sounds kind of crazy. A bunch of teen girls ask us, can we come back over and spend the night? But they did. They really did ask us for it. And as we experienced our first girls' sleepover this year, we really reflected on that experience, trying to determine why exactly the girls wanted to come back. Because, I mean, the girls could have spent that time with their friends, they could have watched the same movies at home, they could eat popcorn and drink hot chocolate in their house, or they could have done any number of activities that they did with us at the sleepover at home. But what we believe is that they really desired this atmosphere that the monastery provides, more than the movies or the activities that we did. And they desired a closeness with us, not because of anything that we did, but because they experienced Christ's love through us and through their time with us. And since we really can't give what we don't have, we believe that what they experience is a direct result of our community knowing that we are defined by God's love alone, which we were able to witness to them in a real way. So moving forward, the second reason the world needs monasticism is to illustrate that each person's ultimate fulfillment lies beyond this life. Through their celibacy, monks really embody a life that recognizes the heavenly reality is inexplicably linked to the earthly reality. According to Father Maximus Davies of Holy Resurrection Monastery, celibacy in Eastern Christianity is viewed primarily as a form of asceticism. Asceticism means, in essence, to live at the same time on earth and in heaven. It means to understand that everything that we see in this life, everything we touch, taste, think, and feel, is in some way a revelation of the life to come. It means that the life that we live right now and the life we will live for eternity are in some mysterious way one and the same. This asceticism also encompasses the monastic virtues of poverty, chastity, and obedience that Mother Theodora had previously mentioned. And it's really through these virtues or vows that monastics illustrate the need to not be enslaved to the temporal things of this life, but to allow oneself to be totally belonging to Christ alone. Poverty prepares the monk to wait indefinitely for any needs or wants that we have, while training his heart not to desire those material goods that God hasn't blessed him yet with. Chastity preserves the monk from forging an exclusive, intimate relationship with another human being, while allowing the monk's heart to be totally free to love everyone God places before him, like you. Obedience challenges the monk in a tangible way to submit his will to the will of his superior, which is a manifestation of the need to die to self so that Christ may live within us. Through these virtues, monastics show that it's not only possible to refrain from gratifying our every momentary desire, but that this is the way to live in true freedom and joy. Not grasping for things, but depending on God alone to provide is the true path to happiness and foreshadowing of the life to come. A third reason the world needs a monastic witness is to counteract our culture's insistence on being relevant, productive, and efficient. According again to Father Aramon, one aspect of the monk's detachment is the fact of not being identified with any type of activity. As it has been said often, the only relevancy of the monk is to be irrelevant, which is not without some importance in the modern society so concerned about relevancy. To be irrelevant in that sense does not mean, however, to be meaningless. The supposed irrelevancy of the monk's life attests to the greater unchanging truths that exist outside of the constant developments of our culture. The monk wears a habit not because it's the latest fashion, but because it's a visible witness of a life lived in service to Christ and represents a relationship with monks that have preceded him. The monk changes what he eats, not because of the newest fad diet, but based on the liturgical calendar of the church, the times of fasting and feasting that have been developed historically. The monk lets go of his death grip on time and participates in the discipline of interruption, allowing Christ to interrupt the monk's life when he comes to the door needing food or shelter or just a listening ear. In order to tap into some of these unchanging truths that I mentioned, monastics spend the same amount of time, if not more, participating in liturgical and personal prayer, as they do in completing tasks that society would deem as productive work, because prayer is the most important work of the monastery. By giving God so much time throughout the day in prayer, the monk begins to let go of this need to be in charge of his own time, and allows God to do work in and through the monk, not on the monk's time frame, but on God's time frame. And it really allows this opportunity for the monk to echo St. John the Baptist's cry of "He must increase, but I must decrease." The self-emptying prayer of monastic life, the effects of which are not usually seen by the monk, mysteriously reverberate throughout all of creation, participating in this great balancing act of all creation. I had an experience recently that really made this reality more concrete for me. We watched a documentary called The Nun, which is a true story of one woman's journey to a Carmelite monastery in Sweden. And during the movie, Marta, the young woman who was becoming a nun, speaks about her life of prayer in the Carmelite monastery, commenting that while they spend much of their time in prayer as monastics, since they're cloistered, they really don't see the effects of that prayer. This comment really rang true with me as I reflect on my own experience of liturgical prayer in our monastery. Since much of our communal prayer I've experienced hasn't really been connected to a person or a particular situation, but to the church and to the world as a whole, oftentimes the fruits of that prayer really haven't been tangible to me. So a few weeks ago, we were celebrating my feast day, and we had gone out of the monastery for the day. And we stopped to pray Vespers before we ate dinner. And we pulled over in this small neighborhood, found a small patch of grass in order to pray on, which was obviously a much different atmosphere than our little chapel at the monastery. And as we began to pray, I was really captivated by all these cars and people who were going by. And as I watched them, and I was seeing them, and I noticed that some of them saw that we were there. Some of them, blatantly stared, kind of like the Amish do as they watch us go by. And others of them just kind of zipped by and had no idea that we were there praying. And as I watched all of them pass by us, I was really taken back to that comment by Marta, that we don't see the effects of our prayer. And I really felt like God was saying to me, even though these people don't know that you're praying for them, your little prayers really are helping to keep their world in order. And it was such a gift for me. It was like the first time that I was able to witness, even in just a small way, that my prayer as a monastic does have an impact on the world, even if I don't always see it. And even if some people don't see that monastic prayer, they see it as lacking some kind of relevancy or productivity, God showed me in that moment that the only way that the world continues to be productive is really through that underlying ocean of monastic prayer that we participate in. So, the fourth reason, though, the world needs monasticism is to show how to enter into a relationship with Jesus Christ and how that relationship should be central to a person's existence. As I mentioned before, the most important work of the monastery is prayer. And this focus of purpose on prayer is really quite fitting, because another interpretation of the meaning of the word monachos, as Mother Theodora defined as one who is alone before God, another interpretation of that is a person who has one goal, one love, one preoccupation in life. This definition really adds a richer meaning to the word monachos, or monastic, and gives the monk's life revolving around prayer. It gives such a rich meaning to that life in the monastery, this microcosmic level of the monastery, which is really an example for the church and for the world of how our life should be ordered. So monastics, by their very life, testify that encountering Christ in prayer should really be a daily event in the life of a Christian. They really show through their schedule that human need for order and for routine, which our culture more often applies not to prayer, but to that morning cup of coffee to wake us up in the morning and that evening DVR list of TV shows. And sticking to a prayer schedule, it takes work and it takes perseverance, even in the monastery. I mean, if I showed up for prayer only when I felt like it, there would be days I would never set foot in the chapel. But that's really where perseverance takes over. And obedience doesn't hurt. But by submitting ourselves, though, to our daily prayer role and our prayer schedule, we're conditioned to place ourselves before Christ each day, giving Him a greater opportunity to speak to us and a better chance that we'll learn what His voice sounds like. Our prayer also gives direction and context to our work as monastics. Father Ahriman said, "The monk tries to witness through his life that the preoccupation for the needs of his brothers and sisters is something that most naturally grows from a life of intimacy with God, rather than being simply accompanied by occasional prayer." Monks are not social workers, social justice advocates, or psychologists just trying to do a little good in the world. Monks live a life that's centered on prayer, and out of that relationship flows their work. Prayer really leads monastics to God's will for their work, and through that connection of prayer and work, monastics learn to see Christ in each person that they serve, and to serve each person out of the love that they found in Christ. So why does the world need monasticism? Because the world needs witnesses. Pope Paul VI said, "Modern man listens more willingly to witnesses than to teachers. And if he does listen to teachers, it's because they are witnesses." In essence, monastics should provide a living witness of authentic Christianity. They've been called to a life of prayer and service, first of all for their own salvation, and then for the sake of the church. They provide a visible sign of what it looks like to put Christ above all else. Please continue to pray for men and women to respond to Christ's call to holiness through the gift of monastic life, so that our church can continue to be supported by the prayers of these monks and nuns. And please pray too for our little community as we grow, so that we can really embody and live the things that I've identified this evening, and truly become the witnesses that our church needs and the world needs. Thank you, and God bless you.